Today I'm going to talk to you about reasoning and the powers of it, the consequences of not using it, and the consequences of using it. So, reasoning is the power of comprehending, inferring, or thinking, especially in orderly, rational ways. It's a proper exercise of the mind. You're using the faculty of reasons to arrive at conclusions. And that's the most important thing that I want you to take away from this is you want to use the faculty of reason to arrive at conclusion. In society, whether it be current society or previous societies, reasoning has not been used by the larger population of people. You have had people dominate and conquer people for land, kill people over land, dominate and conquer people over religion, over gender, over slavery, over different resources. That shows the lack of reasoning, and it shows the lack of ability to have conversations to come to a equitable compromise. In previous eras, you had people kill people, let's say the stoning era, when they would stone women for perceived promiscuity. Let's say the Salem witch trial era, where they would hang women for being perceived witches. Let's say the era where they enslaved black people from the continent to the Americas over the premise that black people were to be subjugated, subdued, and subservient to other people. Let's say the premise where in religion, where they deem everything that comes from the woman's body as impure, but they try to simulate the woman's bodily functions with religious deities. In essence, the creator is the woman, but they assign the man as the creator, or the big man in the sky that no one's ever seen as the creator. But this creator had to use a virgin teenager to produce a child. The Christians use the eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood of Jesus in the form of drinking wine or eating crackers or biscuits, which is really part of witchcraft. But because it is something that is regularly practiced in Christianity, then it's not perceived as unreasonable. But had this been in the Salem witch trial times, this would have been something that could have led to death, or execution, rather. In today's time, you have so many people that have miscommunications, misunderstandings, because people are not using reasoning. You have in the Islamic religion, where they stone women, they beat women for not wearing hijabs, but there is no consequences publicly, more specifically, for rapists, child pedophiles, which is really pedophiles, but just follow me here. There is no public shaming of these types of figures. You also have people in America who go on and on about disrespecting a particular race, or disrespecting a particular gender, or disrespecting a particular religion and group, when all of it is really ludicrous. So many things around us are recycled and repurposed until it sticks, and once the general public takes hold of it, whatever fits the narrative of the powers that be, that's what most people lean into doing, because people want validation. A lot of times when people want validation, especially external validation, they let down their guards and they ignore reason. So one of the consequences of not using reasoning is miscommunication and misdirection. So you could be looking at the same thing as someone else and get something completely different out of it. You never talk about it, for instance. You never look at it from a different angle. You don't change your POV. And you just go based on what you thought you saw or what you thought you heard. Well, that leads to lies. That leads to improper treatment, and it can lead to misunderstanding and misdirected energy at a person that is perceived guilty but really is innocent. Now, on the other sides of it, if you do employ reason, a lot of people will hate you because you're going to point out things that don't make sense, and other people are going to look at you and say, well, why are you being difficult? Or who else does that? Or you're not making sense, when really you are the only one that's making sense. If you use reasoning, a lot of people will come up against you. They're not going to like you. They're not going to want you around because a lot of people like to lie. They like liars and they want what's going to make them comfortable. And a lot of times the lie is comfortable because it's blissful. You don't have to do any work. That's why so many people are attracted to religion. It's because of the lie. They tell you to wait on someone in the sky, no matter what they call this person. They tell you to wait on this person, wait until after you die, wait until that person comes from out the sky down to the earth to come in and fix you and fix everybody else. You're always waiting for the unknown. And then if someone comes around you with reasoning based on math and science, then you're perceived as the enemy, because people that know how to reason can break down things. They, even if they don't know the answer, they know the right questions to ask. And religious people, I would say, they don't like you to ask too many questions, because too many questions, then you start to show their inadequacies and show that they don't know. And they don't want to say, I don't know. They want to give you the answer so that you can fall in line with them. So the best thing you can do to develop reasoning is to ask questions. And if people don't like you asking questions, that means that's not someone you need to learn from. If someone tells you, shh, be quiet, don't ask that, you got to be careful asking that. That's not someone you want to be around, because that means that person has a lot of fear inside of them, and out of fear, they'll do something to you to make themselves look good, or they'll do something to you so that way you won't expose them, because maybe they have questions, maybe they thought of that question, but they were too scared to ask that question. So as a person with reasoning, you may have to be alone. You may have to stay away from other people, and you may have to walk a path where it's basically you and yourself by yourself. Because people in this generation, or I won't say this generation, people in this day and time, more so adults to be honest, lack reasoning. It's mostly the adults, because children, they have great reasoning. They are taught to not reason well, from lying to them about strange characters coming into their house at night, or parents telling them about different bodily parts or different happenings and occurrences with their body, and they describing it in terms that are foolish. It's so much that goes into lying to children these days. So once you become an adult, you've been lied to by adults so much, you just become part of the program. So if you want to get out of being someone that's easily lied to, or that just accepts lies on face value, learn to just ask questions. A lot of this can be seen in the court system or the legal system. So a lot of people understand that the legal system is not always just. And a lot of that is due to relying on people's biases. So a lot of times when people rely on witness statements, you don't know the biases of that person. You don't know whether they hate a particular group of people or a particular gender or a particular type of clothing. You don't know if they are on medication and they have XYZ wrong with them. You don't know if they have a vision problem. You don't know if they have uh, a hearing problem, a coherency problem. So a lot of times when you're trying to go for jury duty, they will ask you certain questions. And a lot of times when they take statements, especially when you call in especially to like a 911 operator, no one is asking you those types of questions. But when you submit statements, there are some type of qualifications that they go through to get statements, but it's not enough. Now imagine that in everyday occurrences where people are telling you what happened to them, or people are telling you about this person, they telling you about that person. Well, you have to evaluate their POV. You have to evaluate whether they have biases, because a lot of people that are telling you things, they're gossiping. And a lot of people are gossipers. They try to attribute it to mainly women, but that's males are gossipers. There are so many people that are gossipers. It's not a gender thing. People gossip, people talk about other people, people are in other people's business, and a lot of times they don't know what's going on. They're just looking from the outside, trying to develop a narrative of someone else. And a lot of times when you don't fit into the mold that other people have put you in, when you don't fit into the box that someone has made specifically for you, then they classify you as difficult. And once you're deemed as difficult, then people start to nitpick at you and find things wrong with you. And if you say, for instance, you get in trouble, or you have an instance where have a predicament where maybe you did do something wrong, everyone will start to dogpile on you. They'll pile things on you because they don't like you anyway. So all of these things are important. When you start listening to people tell you things, learn their POV, learn their biases. If someone comes to you with information, ask who, when, where, why, and what. Who told you this? When did they tell you this? Where were you when they told you this? And why did they tell you this? And then repeat back to me again what they told you. And a lot of times when you go through that line of questioning, people will start changing up certain things. And you'll be like, well, you just told me this. Well, no, I meant this. And as you keep going along, you'll see most people are liars. Most people that you're talking to are outright liars. From the head person in the office today, yesterday, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 18 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, to the person that's standing at the pulpit, to the person that's at the head of whatever organization. A lot of people are liars because a lot of people in authority, especially men in authority, are not questioned. And a lot of times people think if a woman is replacing that man in authority, that they'll be different. Well, if it's a man's game and a woman joins the game, well, the woman is trying to play that game. So she's trying to get by doing the same thing the males do, just with a prettier face or a more pleasant attitude. But she still is playing the same game. And a lot of times people think their favorite person or the person that looks like them or sounds like them is going to be better for them. And usually it doesn't work out that way, because if you're trying to play the same game that the person before you was playing and it didn't work out for them, it's still not going to work out for you no matter what you look like. So ask questions. Learn to decipher between the lines, because a lot of times people will they'll speak in innuendos, or they'll speak in false positives, or they'll speak in gray areas. Well, maybe, well, I was thinking this, or, and you know, such and such and such and such and such, but I don't know this, that, and the third. They a lot of times will give you something to think on and to draw your own conclusions. But if you ask more rational questions instead of just playing along and listening, I had to learn this years ago. Instead of just listening to what people tell me, start to ask questions. A lot of times you start asking and they start stuttering because they didn't expect you to ask questions. Like if you're in a church, ask your pastor. If you're in a temple, ask your minister. If you're in a synagogue, ask your priest. If you're in a masjid, ask the imam. And everyone should have questions. If you're in the lobbying, ask one of the senators or whoever is at the head of that. I'm not too knowledgeable on that. Ask the president. Ask your local governor, your local mayor. Stand outside their offices. Start to ask people questions. A lot of times we fall victim to misunderstandings or miscommunications because we're not asking questions. And it's not purely the fault of the person who didn't ask the questions, because people know when they're being dishonest, and people know when they're hiding the truth, or when they're playing against the narrative to allow you to draw conclusions. They know what they're doing. But if you want the best outcome, you still should ask questions. And this will lead you to make it make sense. If it didn't make sense before, you're going to make it make sense. It's either going to be proven that the person is lying or they're telling the truth. And if there's a gray area, then it's a lie. Because if someone's guessing, then it's still a lie. If they don't know, then it's a lie. And all of that will tap into your ability to reason. So when someone comes to you and tells you this, that, and the third, you're not going to be tricked by it, because you're going to ask questions. And when you ask questions, you're going to start learning and developing this knowledge base. Okay, well, I know the cues when somebody lying. Because when I start asking them questions and they start fidgeting, or they start doing this and the third, or they start saying I gotta go, or I don't got time to explain everything to you. Oh, okay, but just don't come back to me with no more information unless you have time to explain it to me. So use your reasoning skills. This will assist women in so many areas specifically, because the biggest programming has been to teach women not to look within. It's across the board for both genders, but understand, leaders have been programmed to us as men. So whether you're religious, whether you're institutions, whether you're in seats of authority like presidents and things like that, it's always been, whether you in a quote unquote seated position as a godhead, a deity, it's all been programmed in our mind that that's something that men do. So women are taught to look without for structure, for confirmation, for validation. All of that destroys your inner womanhood. Learn to look within. When you look within, anything that doesn't line up with what you know to be the truth, once you've already started the journey of reasoning, you're going to say, well, hold on, wait a minute, that don't sound right. And you won't be so susceptible to someone coming up to you telling you to do X, Y, and Z. Because a lot of times, especially as young girls, we are preyed on a lot by males and by adults, because we are susceptible to listen to a male. And this has been recorded and studied. Most people will listen to a male tell them something before they listen to a female say something, even if both are saying the same thing. Even if the woman is saying it in a better disposition, it doesn't matter. People are more in tune to listen to women. Excuse me, they're more in tune to listen to males. And think about your reasoning, your rationale, your way of thinking. How many times have you heard something being taught to you from a specific person that looks like XYZ, or another person that looks like ABC? Learn your own biases, so that when someone brings you information, you'll decipher, am I listening to this person because I like them, I like their personality, or am I listening to them because they're actually valuable, it's valuable information they're giving me? And that'll help you with so many areas. A lot of times people have favorite people that they listen to just because they like their personality. The person may be a crappy person. They may not even be saying all truth, but because you like them, because you agree with them, because you like their personality, now they can't do no wrong. And that's how cults are formed. Many people have joined cults, and either they don't know it or they know it and they're okay with it because they like the personality of the person that they were around. So you can have a cult, whether it could be a fraternity, a sorority, a police group, a department at your work. It can be a religious group. It can be a political party group. People form cults all the time because it's really stems from travel thinking, but it goes a little bit further because people in today's time have access to education. Like, you can open your phone and learn anything you want to learn. And especially look at the cult like worship of celebrities. From celebrities 50 years ago to celebrities today. A lot of people have a cult-like worship of celebrities, so their favorite celebrity can do something so heinous that they'll still support them. They can even have rumors of certain things so heinous, and people won't even venture to look into it. Now, I'm not saying believe it, because people lie all the time. So someone could actually have not done something, and just because there is a rumor, that doesn't mean you need to listen to it. So let me change that wording. Don't listen to rumors. Look at evidence. So a lot of times people will say certain things, and you'll start hearing people say, well, I heard this, I heard that, and I believe this, oh, I could see it, because of how they act. Or you know what, their so and so wasn't that good, so it's probably that. Those are like things like rumors. Well, if it's for evidence, look at how someone's pattern of history is. You always have to look at someone's history or her story. Look at how they've behaved in the past. Look at the circumstances they put themselves in. Look at their criminal record. That's a great indicator. Or the lack of it. Look at how they interact with people who don't have any perceived authority or power. That's a great way to determine someone's character. How they react to people who really can't do anything for them. Look at how they treat people who do things for them, like servant staff, customer service, and things like that. And a lot of times people think just because you're poor means you can't be a bad person, or just because you are someone's favorite celebrity, you can't be a bad person. Just because you can sing and dance, that doesn't mean you can't be a bad person. Just because you did one thing right that someone can point to, that don't mean you can't do 100 things wrong. So people really have cult worship. And something that's even crazy, that's like along the same lines as religious cults, is fan cults. Like the way people worship celebrities, the way people worship football teams and basketball teams, you would think they just got a new child born into the world. Like people take this stuff so serious. They would be at games yelling to the top of their lungs, painting their body, arguing, fighting, betting on their favorite team, losing thousands of dollars, millions of dollars over a team that don't even know them individually. People have a strange addiction to cult worship. And it's based on personality. Sometimes it can be based on talent. Sometimes it can be based on something like what they can do for you. That's more so religion. If the pastor got something right a year ago, and few people lives improved, now see the second coming to God. So you have to observe people in their element and how they act when they're not in their element. And a lot of times you can see right off of the bat when someone isn't too, they aren't too sound minded. Because a lot of times people that are leading cults, they're clever, they have some type of intelligence about them, but they are not really that reasonable either. Because a lot of times when you're leading a cult, and once the people wake up, they will hurt you. And that's a big risk of cult leaders. Once people wake up, if they ever wake up, you'll be the first person to receive their attacks. So and it puts a lot of pressure on the cult leader to continue to lie. A lot of cult leaders aren't reasonable. They're not very rational. But that's a conversation for another day. But just the main thing is using reasoning to avoid cults. And we have to talk about male worship. This is mostly covering every type of worship that I've talked about, with the exception of celebrity worship, and a few others. But male worship has caused so much damage to families. It can be something as severe as you not being believed when you've been harmed sexually or physically by a male parent or male guardian. Male worship leads to parental estrangement, where one parent, or both parents, will put the child out due to either a religious commandment that they're following, or some type of dispute on the facts between their romantic partner and their child. So, say for instance, some parents put their child out who they perceive as homosexual, or who the religious group has perceived as homosexual, because they want validation from this religious group. They're not concerned about their child, but they're concerned about the validation from this religious group. So they'll put the child out. You have mothers who will put their daughters out because the religious group doesn't condone her behavior, or because they don't agree with the pastor or the minister. You will have mothers put their daughter out because they claim that the romantic partner of the mother has sexually assaulted them or molested them or raped them, and the mother doesn't believe it, or the mother accuses the daughter of being fast, or uh, what's another one? The mother may accuse the daughter of trying to seduce her husband. I mean, you have so many different things that children have gone through, and it has caused them to be estranged from their parent or parents. That is one of the most diabolical forms, because that will destroy a family dynamic for generations. And it can be something as simple as when you're out and about and you tell someone that a male did something to you, and they ask you what were you wearing, or you were asking for it, or it's not that serious. And in the black among the black collective, we know that all too well, because if you try to say something that a black male did to you, first thing they'll say is, well, be careful. It's a lot of black males that have been in prison for false accusations. Mind you, there's a lot of black males that's in prison for true accusations. There's a lot of other males of other races and groups in prison for false accusations and true accusations. But this is something, a narrative that's spun against a lot of girls and women to keep them from telling the truth, because it's worship of males, specifically black males. On down to the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I know Black Lives Matter, but that was male worship at its peak, for women to join a movement to protest physically with their bodies out in the street. You have little children, little girls protesting that should be in school, or definitely shouldn't be on the street protesting. That was the epitome of male worship. And there are so many black women who have yet to even come around to the idea that protesting bodily harm against a male by putting your body in harm is male worship. If males cannot defend themselves physically against another male, what is a woman going to do about that? You going to fight the male for on his behalf? Also, to put yourself in that type of physical, emotional, and mental battle over something that does not center you. There are so many women, specifically black women, that are dying due to false forms of health care, whether it's the medicine that they give, the treatment that they give, or the lack of appropriate diagnosis. There's maternal care that has been highly regulated. So many black mothers are dying due to this. These are some of the things that should concern the black collective, especially the black female collective, but it's police brutality. That's another way in which we are conditioned to male worship. And of course, with religion and celebrity worship, we already know that that's a big pattern of male worship that a lot of the black collective suffers from. So there's really no excuse today for us to be so, and I use us loosely, but for the mass amount of people to be so illiterate and unreasonable. If you just take a minute, think about what you're about to do, think about your next move, or if you're acting on impulse, which is really not the best thing, but I'm not one to really be able to talk about that. But if you're acting on impulse, if something doesn't seem reasonable to you, stop right there. Think about it. Take a moment. Anything that requires you to act on impulse is usually not something that you need to do. if you using reasoning, you wouldn't act on impulse, because that's how a lot of con artists get people. That's how a lot of car salesmen. That's how a lot of political pundits have swayed people to take their way of thinking, to vote for them, to purchase some product that they're selling because of impulse. Or they change your POV. They tell you what you're going through, what you're experiencing. And maybe you like their personality, or maybe you have a bias against someone else, and now instead of using reasoning, you are going along with a programming because you don't like something that's or somebody. If you don't take anything else away from what I'm saying, learn to arrive at conclusions by using sufficient reasoning. You talk it out in your head. Make sure you have a sufficient ground to stand on when you are planting your flag on a hill in which you're willing to fight and argue and even die on. Don't support anything that you not willing to put your name beside. If it's something that you can't agree with, you just say, I don't know much about that. It's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know much about that. I'm still trying to learn. Or, I don't have all the facts. I'm still learning. Or, I don't have all the facts. I don't plan on getting the facts on that. You can skip me with that question, or with that line of thinking. Until I know which way I'm going, I'm not making a decision yet. And if people don't like that, you can just hang up the phone with them. And I mean that literally, and I mean that figuratively. The same way, if you're on the phone with somebody and someone trying to sell you on something, and you say, after you've told them no, you can hang up the phone. The same way, if someone is in front of you trying to get you to do something and you said no, hang up the phone on them. Just say, I'm done, and walk away if you safe to turn your back on them, or you make them walk away. Make them uncomfortable. When you use reason, people can tell you right off the bat, because people that like to lie and that like to pick out their victims, they look for people who are easily lied to. That's why people like to lie to children. That's why people like to lie to women, especially males, because that's one thing males will tell you. It's easy to lie to women, because a lot of women believe men on face value, and that's how men trick women. It's because by their mouth, they lie well. Women can trick males in a different way, but it's not usually through the words that we say. So learn how to reason. Use context clues. Come to sufficient conclusions based on reasoning. And for more information, stay tuned.